You paint a very clear picture there, Anna, and a very dangerous situation, really, and how that fits into a global picture. So thanks so much for sharing that. And just wanted to kind of get more into the state of affairs with the incoming US administration. Unfortunately, the recent election of Trump, there's ample evidence to suggest that tensions in this region are going to be intensified. So during Trump's election campaign, he relied on empty rhetoric and this fake anti-war posturing. However, the warmongering character of his incoming administration tells the real story here. So just to go through a few of his top three picks, we've got Marco Rubio, who's the nominee for Secretary of State, who is famously hawkish against China. His Secretary of Defense, who thinks Israel should annex the occupied West Bank. And while his national security advisor appointee, Mike Waltz, wants to cut aid to Ukraine, it is clear from his remarks on social media that this is in order to transfer resources to escalate towards a potential hot war with China. So in May 2023, he wrote, "We must learn from Ukraine by addressing the threat of the Chinese Communist Party and arming Taiwan now before it's too late." So this suggests a likely escalation, actually, in the South China Sea and for the Philippines to be used against China. So where are things heading? We saw in November that the Philippine president signed into law the enactment of a Maritime Zones Act with the explicit support of the United States, despite the encroachment on Vietnam, Malaysia, and Chinese territorial claims. So what other angles of escalation do you foresee in the region?
Okay, that's a very good question as well, no? With the recent passage of two laws, actually it was two laws, but the more critical I think is the Maritime Zones law. This is one source of escalation. Why? Because if you look at the Philippines vis-a-vis other countries in the South China Sea dispute, China, when you talk about their claims, is historic claim. And their claim is sovereignty in some parts of that area. So that's their claim. On the other hand, Vietnam also has the same sovereignty, and the others are economic zone based on UNCLOS. The Philippines' claim is economic zone, that we have an EEZ in some parts of the South China Sea. But when you talk about EEZ based on UNCLOS, it means that it's not our territory. We only have an sovereign rights to exploit the resources below the sea level, but above the sea, it's already international waters. So based on UNCLOS, when you say in the EEZ, there's such a thing as freedom of navigation and innocent passage. So it means that anyone or any country for that matter can pass through that EEZ, but will not linger on there in that area, and also will not be doing some kind of economic exploitation of marine resources or even maritime or marine scientific research. They can pass through innocently or freedom of navigation. May it be a commercial ship, may it be a warship. That's basically the situation. However, given the passage of these two laws, especially the Maritime Zones Act, it seems that these laws are domestic. So if you pass a domestic law, and the subject of the domestic law is that area, which is the EEZ. When you impose this law and when you implement this law, you try to have some kind of restrictions. So you impose and then there is restriction. Now, the problem is these laws, into some degree, if you look at UNCLOS, it violates the provision on the freedom of navigation and innocent passage. Now, if you implement this and then a ship, like for example, a Russian ship, a Russian submarine, or a Chinese ship will pass through that area. And if we enforce the domestic law, we will say that you cannot pass through this area because we have a law that this is our controlled area. But of course, the other side will say, no, that is an international water. We will pass as long as we want. And that is disputed area too. So in a way, if this will not be bridged, like for on our side, we will push and push, and of course other claimant states will push their, and of course they will push also. So you have two opposing poles, and probably it will escalate into some kind of a tension. So that's a possible escalation. That's a possible source of tension in the South China Sea right now with the passage of two laws. I'm not saying that I'm not for my country. Of course, I would always stand for my country. But the thing here is the passage of these laws, these are domestic laws, these are in conflict with the claims of the other claimant states. So the thing here is, the danger is, at the ASEAN level, it's always been the mantra of ASEAN to resolve conflict diplomatically and peacefully. But if you push your agenda by saying that we have these laws and we will implement this, you go against that kind of mantra and slogan that, we talk it out, we resolve it diplomatically, let's not escalate tension. That is the source of the problem. Domestically, yeah, maybe we're saying that, we are reinforcing our claim in the South China Sea as Filipinos. But on the other hand, we're also creating some kind of tension if we implement this. Because other claimant states and even other countries who are not claimant states will also be affected by these laws in view on the pretext of what you call freedom of navigation and innocent passage. So that's one possible source or potential source of escalation. The other very important source of escalation right now is that typhoon missile system really that is deployed in Lawag in the northern part of the Philippines. Precisely because China and Russia is really, really not happy about it. There are so many occasions already that China expressed its opposition and Russia expressed its opposition. It was even President Putin who actually pointed out that we know that in the Philippines you have this missile system. If you do this, we're gonna take some actions too. The reason why China and Russia are reacting to this Typhoon missile system that is deployed now in my country is precisely because these are American assets. And if you say American assets, there's always this perception already that America has a plan that is not good either for China or not good for Russia. This Typhoon missile system is located in my country. And in addition to that, you have the 9 EDCA bases, which are controlled by the United States, and they're US bases. So if you really look at the situation, the tension is really heightened into a certain extent. The only way to resolve this is to de-escalate tension for us not to have a conflict in the Asia-Pacific region that I'm afraid that it would start from the Philippines. Because really, it's only the Philippines right now that it's very hot. It's a hot country when you talk about geopolitical issues. Vietnam, no. Malaysia, no. Other countries, no. It's really the Philippines as against to China. It's against to China. Because, I mean, we're being used as a pawn against China by the United States. So the thing here is how you de-escalate this. There are only two ways. First is you change your foreign policy. But I don't think that that is possible under Marcos Jr. administration. They're really, really heavily tied to the United States, especially under a Biden administration. The second possibility is if Trump really will follow through with his promises that he wants a peaceful world, that he wants to de-escalate tension in Gaza, he wants to de-escalate tension in Ukraine, and he doesn't want a war in the Philippines or between China and the Philippines or in the South China Sea. That it should be America first, and war is not good for America in many ways. So that's the second solution, but I'm not sure because as you mentioned earlier, the 3 people that will be appointed in 3 important positions are, it seems like they're bad news for peace-loving people. So that is the case at the moment in my country. So if you really look at the Philippines, it's like a small country that is being dragged in the conflict and strategic competition and rivalry between superpowers. And that would I say the United States, China, and Russia. But we are a small country. As much as possible as a Filipino, I don't want my country to be dragged in this kind of dynamics. We should be insulated and we should, we should not participate in this. But at the moment, under Marcos Jr. administration, we are in many ways in the middle of all of this geopolitical rivalry and competition among superpowers. And I sometimes feel like, why in the hell a small country like mine who's struggling domestically with a lots of problems domestically would want to be in the middle of all of these things when we can, possibly first solve our domestic problems before we involve in this kind of geopolitical maneuverings coming from superpowers. That's really the case. That's really the fact of the matter at the moment.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm going to bring another area where the Philippines is isolating itself because it's under the thumb of the US, which is BRICS. I mean, with the recent addition of 13 partner countries into BRICS, including Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, the Philippines is really isolating itself to the point where there's even some talk about it leaving ASEAN. Hopefully not. But, there are obvious reasons to have good trade relations with neighboring countries in the region, and of course, most importantly, with China. Can you expand on the consequences of this for the Philippines? And also, is there any awareness amongst the Filipino public on what these worsening relations will mean for their futures?
That's a very interesting question. First and foremost, I am very sad and not really so happy that, Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, I think it's Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand actually are now parts of BRICS.